let's jump into another deep dive.
Okay.
And this time, we're looking at Mark chapter 7.
Okay.
And it's really interesting because it's all about this clash between, like, Jesus and the Pharisees
Yes.
over traditions and what it truly means to be pure.
Definitely.
So you ready to get into this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, you know?
There is.
This passage, like, really highlights the tension that can sometimes exist
Yeah.
between following religious rules
Yeah.
and truly, like, understanding the spirit of faith.
That's right.
Yeah, like right from the start.
Yeah.
We're dropped into this scene where Jesus' disciples are eating without performing that, like, ritualistic hand washing
Right.
that the Pharisees considered so important. Like,
Yeah.
you can practically feel the disapproval
Oh, yeah.
radiating off the Pharisees in this scene.
They're not happy.
It's, like, palpable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important to remember, though, like, for the Pharisees, these hand-washing rituals, they weren't just about hygiene,
No.
right?
It was much deeper than that.
Yeah.
It was really embedded in their understanding of religious purity.
Mm-hmm.
And they believed that,
Yeah.
meticulously following these traditions was, like, crucial. Like,
Yeah.
it was a cornerstone
Yeah.
for maintaining a right relationship with God.
So when Jesus' disciples don't follow these rituals,
Yeah.
it's like a direct challenge
It is.
to the Pharisees' entire
system of beliefs.
their worldview.
Their worldview.
Exactly. And Jesus, like, he doesn't shy away
No.
with this confrontation.
Yeah.
He calls them out for prioritizing tradition.
Over the true spirit of God's commandments.
Yeah. He even quotes Isaiah, right?
He does.
Accusing them of honoring God with their lips
With their lips.
while their hearts are far away.
Empty words.
Yeah. That's pretty strong language.
Very strong.
He's not mincing words.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And to really drive his point home,
Yeah.
he uses this, like, striking example of Korban.
Yeah.
So imagine this.
Okay.
Someone could declare their possessions as a gift to God, a practice known as Korban,
Right.
and then use that as an excuse
Oh,
to neglect their duty,
Yeah.
to care for their, like, aging parents.
Wow. Yeah.
So they're technically following a religious principle,
Right.
but they're using it
As a loophole.
as a loophole
Yeah.
to avoid their responsibility.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Almost like a.
It's like gaming the system.
It is gaming the system.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Jesus is highlighting how easily rules can be twisted
Yes.
and manipulated to serve, like, selfish motives.
Yes.
He's saying that true obedience to God
Right.
goes far beyond, like, outward actions.
Absolutely. Outward actions.
It requires a genuine change of heart.
100%. Yeah.
Then Jesus takes this whole debate a step further.
Okay.
He completely flips the script on what
Yes.
truly makes a person unclean.
He does.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He gathers the crowd
Right.
and delivers this, like, radical teaching.
Okay.
It's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you,
Yeah.
but what comes out of your heart.
That's right.
He lists all these, quote, evil things, end quote.
Yeah.
Evil thoughts, adultery, theft, murder, deceit, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly.
Yeah.
It's a completely different focus
It is.
than the Pharisees' emphasis on external cleanliness.
Yeah.
He's shifting the focus
Yeah.
from external rituals to the internal state.
Of a person.
It's about our intentions,
Yes.
our thoughts, our motivations.
That's it.
That's a pretty radical concept
Very.
for the time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
His disciples are a little confused,
Of course.
which isn't surprising.
Understandably.
So Jesus goes on to explain that food doesn't defile a person
Yeah.
because it doesn't enter their heart.
Right.
It just goes through the digestive system.
Oh, right. In one end and out the other.
What truly defiles a person
Yeah.
originates from within, from their heart and mind.
That's it.
This is a powerful image,
Very favorite.
right? It's about recognizing
Yeah.
that true purity comes from a place
Yeah.
of genuine love,
Yeah.
compassion,
Yeah.
and integrity.
Yes.
It's not about meticulously following rules
Yeah.
while harboring ill will
Yeah.
or selfish desires
Right.
in our hearts.
In your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this, like, intense clash
Yes.
between outward rituals
Yeah.
and inner purity.
That's right.
But how does this ancient debate
Yeah.
connect to our lives today?
Yeah.
What can we take away from this?
That's the question.
Like, what does it mean for us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Big question.
Yeah.
So
I think that's something
it is something.
that we need to explore further as we kind of dive deeper into this passage.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to.
Because this dynamic between tradition and genuine faith
Yay.
is something that continues to play out in our world
It does.
in all sorts of
All
ways.
sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've been unpacking this whole idea that true purity comes from within, not from external rituals, but what does it actually look like to align our hearts with God's will? You mentioned that earlier, and it sounds kind of abstract to me.
Yeah, it's a question that has, challenged people of faith for centuries. But I think the stories that follow this teaching in Mark offer some clues. Remember the stories of the Syrophoenician woman and the deaf man we touched on earlier?
Yeah. I'm curious to see how those stories fit into this, bigger picture.
Yeah, well, notice how Jesus responds to both of them. He doesn't get caught up in technicalities or worry about whether they're part of the right religious group or anything. He simply sees their need, their suffering, and responds with compassion and action.
So it's like he's cutting through all the religious red tape and getting to the heart of what truly matters.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I think, is a key part of aligning our hearts with God's will. It's about cultivating that same spirit of compassion and responsiveness. It's about looking beyond superficial differences, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity in every person, and acting accordingly.
So it's not just about avoiding those, like, evil things Jesus listed, like theft or adultery. It's also about actively choosing to be kind, generous, understanding.
Absolutely. And this is where the real challenge lies, because it's not just about, grand gestures or heroic acts. It's about the everyday choices we make, the way we interact with people, the way we respond to challenges. Do we approach situations with a judgmental or an open heart? Do we seek to understand different perspectives even when we disagree?
Yeah, you're making me realize just how much work this actually takes. It's so easy to get caught up in our own routines and biases and.
It is, and that's why this passage from Mark 7 is so relevant, even though it was written centuries ago. It's a timeless reminder that true faith isn't about checking boxes or following rules blindly. It's about cultivating a heart that is aligned with God's love and compassion, and letting that guide our actions.
So if we want to put this teaching into practice in our lives, where do we even begin? How do we make sure our own traditions or habits aren't overshadowing genuine compassion and care for others?
That's a great question. I think self-reflection is a good place to start. Take some time to examine your own beliefs and behaviors. Are there areas where you might be prioritizing rules or appearances over genuine human connection?
Yeah, I can think of times when I've been so focused on winning an argument that I forgot to actually listen to the other person's perspective, or times when I've been so busy with my own, to-do list that I haven't noticed someone who might need help.
Those are great examples. It's also helpful to pay attention to how you react when you encounter someone who is different from you, whether it's their culture, religion, or socioeconomic background. Do you approach them with curiosity and openness, or do you find yourself putting up walls?
This is making me think about, my own biases and blind spots, which isn't always comfortable, but I think important.
It is important, and remember, this is a lifelong journey. None of us will ever achieve perfect compassion or understanding. But the important thing is to keep striving, to keep challenging ourselves to grow and become more like Christ in our interactions with others.
Before we move on, I'm curious, are there any other examples, maybe from history or even current events, that illustrate this tension between tradition and compassion?
That's a great question to ponder as we move into our final segment, because this dynamic is constantly playing out in our world, often in ways that might surprise you.
So, welcome back to our deep dive into Mark 7. We've been talking about how Jesus challenged the Pharisees' focus on outward rituals and emphasized the importance of inner purity and compassion. And you mentioned that this dynamic between tradition and compassion is still relevant today. So can you give us some examples of how this plays out in, the modern world?
Absolutely. Think about some of the hot button issues we face today, issues where rules and rituals might be prioritized over genuine human needs. For example, immigration debates often get bogged down in legalities and procedures sometimes, kind of overshadowing the very real stories of families seeking a better life.
Yeah, it's like we get so focused on enforcing the letter of the law that we lose sight of the human cost.
Exactly. And, we see similar dynamics in discussions about healthcare, social welfare programs, even environmental protection.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in abstract principles or economic arguments, but we can't afford to forget about the real people whose lives are directly impacted by these issues.
So how do we strike that balance? How do we ensure that, rules and traditions serve their intended purpose without losing sight of compassion and human dignity.
It's a constant challenge, and there's no easy answer. But I think the key is to approach every situation with a willingness to listen, to learn, and to empathize. We need to ask ourselves, what are the underlying values at play here?
Right.
What are the potential consequences of our actions, both intended and unintended?
Yeah.
And are we truly living out the values of compassion and justice that we claim to uphold?
Those are like some tough questions to wrestle with. And I
Yeah.
think important ones.
They are. And remember, this isn't about throwing out all rules or traditions.
Yeah.
Structure and boundaries can be important, but we need to be mindful of how they're being applied and whether they're ultimately serving to uphold human dignity and well-being.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this passage from Mark 7 isn't just some ancient text.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the challenges we face today.
It does. And as we grapple with these complex issues, let's remember the lesson from Mark 7,
Yeah.
True purity comes from within, and compassion should guide our actions. Let's challenge ourselves to see beyond superficial differences and prioritize genuine human connection.
That's a powerful message to take away from this deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for guiding us through this thought-provoking discussion.
It's been my pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.